Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for opening weekend, day number one. The Saturday races, we've got Omloop men and women's races with huge, just completely different races to what both of us expected. We've got Gran Camino, Benji watched Visit South Aegean Islands, Facebook stream most likely. We have Fornardesh, absolute chaos in the finish there as well. So it was like a fever dream, the racing today, actually. But starting with the men's Omloop, which had the usual course in the final 40 Ks or so, but a bit different, not as hard, I would say, in the middle of the third of the race around the Leberg-Valkenburg. It only really started at the Eichenberg with about 58 Ks to go. Headwind, I think light headwind to the finish, some crosswind on the climbs. So a bit more favourable to the sprinters than in previous years. The last sprint, let's say, was Davide Ballerini in 2021.
But
yeah, I think,
if I recall correctly, the Van Baarle victory was in a headwind after the Muur, no? Because that's when he was also benefiting from moto pacing on the way to the finish line. And I recall it vividly that it was on paper a headwind last kilometers. So just because it's headwind doesn't mean that it will eventually be a sprint. And I gotta say, looking at the start list before this race started, I thought there's so many teams that want to open this race up. UAE does not have a sprinter here, so they want a Morgado, a Narvaez, a Wellens, whatever. They've got so many strong individual riders. Then, obviously, when it comes to Visma Lease bike, Wout van Aert sprints in the last couple of weeks have not looked too impressive when it comes to positioning, seemingly a little scared in those sprints. So I thought, okay, Visma is going to want to open up in this zone from Eichenberg to Molenberg. And then I look at Red Bull Bora. That's a bit of an in-betweener because, let's be clear, before this race, I considered Jordi Meus the most likely candidate of Red Bull Bora to win this race. Is that a wrong assumption?
For sure, the most likely. Because for Tratnik to go solo, he has to drop, by definition, to go solo, you have to drop every single other rider. Right?
No shit, Sherlock.
So
except Polit.
So Jan Tratnik has to basically be better. Unless Bora as a block is so strong, he has to be better than every other rider, which, listen, Tratnik in Omloop last few years has been unbelievably good, but it's not likely. And what you really want is to pair an attacker with a sprinter. I mean, you've got the Van Dijks who are sort of in the middle, but Tratnik normally is not winning a reduced group sprint of 4 or 5 riders either. With Pollard, it was a different situation. So, Meus with the headwind, I was like, he won the bunch sprint in Gent-Wevelgem last year, I think, or some other. He is good at sprinting at the end of a classic. So that was crazy to me. I also
we haven't spoken about the crazy part yet. We haven't said what Red Bull Bora will do yet. So just that was our assumption before the race. I wanted to get that cleared up.
But yeah, I also was surprised not to see Milan on the start list because, Paul Magnier and Jasper Philipsen could have gone deep in, looked like they could go deep into this race. The sprinters, Biniam didn't start because his wife was giving birth in Eritrea, so Intermarché also lose their sprint option.
I do want to talk. You said Milan. When it comes to Pedersen, I've got the same feeling. I'm sorry, but Pedersen, great classics rider. Like, he's won twice Gent-Wevelgem, but at the end of the day, he's only won twice Gent-Wevelgem in his career. A lot of riders would be very happy with that, but that doesn't make you have the luxury that you can skip opportunities left and right when it comes to World Tour Classics riders, or when it comes to World Tour Classics races. So I'm always surprised to see Pedersen skip Omloop every single year, especially because it's a race that on paper fits him relatively perfectly, in my opinion.
Perfect classic for him. Flat finish with enough hard climbs that are, like the Bosberg's not that hard. It's not like the Paderberg. It's good for a powerful rider like him. So, or him or Milan would have made the finish today for sure. Breakaway Benji was as expected. A couple of DSMs, couple of Flanders Baloises, etc. 6 riders controlled at about 5 minutes.
Where are the days where we gave the breakaway their 15 minutes of fame? We have the likes of Sibe de Weerden en Verkooi on Flanders Baloise, Hartijs de Vries on Unibet Titema Rockets, Enzo Lijnse, Julius van den Berg at Picnic PostNL, Elmar Reinders for Jayco, and Epis Giosue. I swear I've mentioned this guy before this year when it comes to a breakaway for Arkea BNB Hotels.
He sounds like a Hogwarts student.
I don't know. Maybe?
He bridged across later, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Now, this breakaway, it's largely going to hear of it. they remained ahead for quite a while in the race, and therefore had an opportunity of potentially skipping the action that happens in the peloton. But at the end of the day, it won't lead too much for these riders in the breakaway. So let's just say these guys were ahead and eventually get caught. But we're going to start off with the peloton a little bit before we get to like the important segments. A couple of crashes in the early phase of the race, and I saw a picture on Sportza where it looked like maybe Tratnik was involved. Then a UNOX rider, Kim Hajduk for Ineos, Jayco rider Q46.5. No one super notable seemed in any trouble as a consequence of it. But there was this interesting moment when the race coverage started with about 95 kilometers to go. For context, we're not at the Haaghoek yet, we're not at the Leeberg yet, we're not at the Eikenberg at all yet. Still 30 kilometers for the phase of truth in this race. And we see OE coming to the front on the left side of the road and kind of smashing it for about 500 meters to a kilometer, trying to split the group. And was it because there was an exposed wind zone there, or do you see that as they saw something? What happened?
I mean, the TV had just lingered on Van Aert, Jorgensen, and the whole Visma team being the last wheel of the peloton. And yeah, you could see them Morgado on the radio, and it was a slightly exposed section. So yeah, they then launched it. And that was a feature of this whole phase of the race, is that Van Aert pretty much was never better than P50 the entire race until the final.
But is that a problem? As in, the way I see it right now is, we're at 95 kilometers to go. I don't see the need to be in a perfect position, bar echelon zones, until the run up to the Eikenberg.
No,
with 65-ish kilometers to go.
That's fine. He can sit at the back if he wants. But then Visma need more than just Affini at the front. What if there's a split? What if some random guy at P40 in that zone drops the wheel, and UAE go clear with 40 riders with just Affini in it?
Yep.
Not good, is it?
It's like a couple of years ago when we looked at a 2021, maybe Edri or Omloop, the one where Hostellerie is with about 116 kilometers to go in the race. In those kind of races, we always saw one or two riders from a Quick Step, one or two riders from a Visma, for example, trying to be at the front to at least have some presence just in case something happened, and therefore it wouldn't have to be Wout van Aert or Jorgensen there. But anyway, there are once again crashes in this phase of the race, and it does include a Visma rider. We've got Victor Kampenaerts crashing in a bit of a corner. I didn't see the exact crash. Maybe you did. But
yeah, so he was at the back of the peloton, and it was like everyone slowed because every climb basically. So as we got into like the Leeberg and this phase of the race in the pre-final, Quickstep and Alpecin were on the front of every climb, making it go as slow as possible because they have Magnier and they have Philipsen. Great tactics, and they're in good position this whole phase of the race. What that means though at the back is people slow down so much they're bumping shoulders. And that concertina effect knocked Kampenaerts into the ditch on the right-hand side. Got back up, but then had a mechanical. Had to change a wheel. Came back, then had another mechanical 5 minutes later. Dropped his chain on the inside of his rear cassette, which if you ride a bike, you'll know that...
That's drama. That is full-on drama, that's for sure. It's something you definitely don't want to happen.
We should mention, by the way, when the break went, two teams that both had the favourites to the race just put a rider to control. That's not relevant to this race, but for when we discuss the women's race. UAE and Visma just put a rider in pace.
Yep, that is true. Now, we're at the point now where we're starting to enter the zone where stuff does become dangerous. And that is because we're entering the last 70 kilometers of the race, which means the Eikenberg is coming. Before the race starts, look at the parkour. Eikenberg to Molenberg. It's a zone where you'd expect the teams that want to make attacks in the attacking zone, that to be the attacking zone. So I was expecting Visma Lease bike, UAE, Red Bull Bora with a couple of riders, but not in the way they did it. Because I was shocked when I saw this. With 70 kilometers to go, I see Jordi Meeuws at the front of the group doing a lead out to put his teammates in position here. That is the most shocking thing I've seen today. Well, I'm not sure about that because a lot of shocking things happen today. But tactics-wise, the rider you have, he's literally the rider of Bora that has the biggest chance of winning this damn race. And before the race started, he did say in an interview that he would be doing this to save energy for Kuurne-Brussel-Kuurne. But I'm sorry, Omloop Nieuwsblad is a World Tour race and you're the best rider in your team to potentially win this race, that is stupendous tactics, in my opinion.
Especially because, like, Lascano is a good rider, don't get me wrong. He can't ride in the peloton. And there's other riders also suffering from that issue. And he's not going to win this race. Like, he's right at the back. And so, yeah, I don't see why Mayus would sit there in the hierarchy. Because especially if you don't have Pithy, like, how do you win the race if you use Mayus like that? So, yeah, maybe he wasn't good. Maybe, as you said, he just wants to save the legs for Kerner. I don't know. But we're seeing this phase, Benji, and it's very different to Omloop in previous years. In previous years, the race opens on the Wolvenberg. Maybe not fully open, but riders begin to anticipate. 2022, Florian Vermeersch. 2022, Degenkolb, and maybe Vermeersch again, actually. Pollard even. Like, riders have begun jumping in the Wolvenberg phase of this race, and then it really opened up on the Molenberg or on the Wolvenberg. And we've got Quickstep and Alpecin here with their sprinters on the second row, and they look like they're having a coffee ride. And they, for them, happy days. Another climb, they got a checkbox of climbs. They got to get through till they get to the finish. Another climb, ticked off, easy pace. And I think I was really, really surprised. I was expecting, and there was one rider who anticipated Benji, but I was expecting Bahrain, FDJ, Visma, UAE, any team without Philipsen or Manier, even Trek with Vasek and Skuins. I was expecting all these teams to begin jumping.
Especially because I don't even consider this anticipating yet. Like, you're right. For example, we had the likes of Josh Darling making a move a bit later in the race, but even on the Eikenberg itself. On the Eikenberg itself, Dan Holle crashes in a ditch. That's just a side note. But Matthew Brennan goes to the front. A group of three gets created with Vito Braat from Intermarché and Mick van Dijken from Red Bull Bora. If you don't know, Brennan is a young, versatile, sprinty type on Visma Lease bike. So a trio goes off the front. And Brennan seemingly starts skipping a turn, probably also because he doesn't necessarily want to get Mick van Dijken a bit further in the race either. That was not the perfect group either to make it very far with that, I'd say. But then we also see eventually when the gap doesn't actually grow out, the likes of Hagenes and Jorgensen coming to the front then trying to make a bit of a surprise move on one side of the road, but there's never a gap anymore at that point. Then it's really on the Holloweg then where we see Joshua Darling as the only real proper attack in this phase of the race, with Darling going off the front, and the gap actually started growing a little bit where the break is still ahead. He's now, I'd say, half a minute to 45 seconds at the maximum ahead of the peloton. But that's the most we've seen in this phase. And like you say, every sprinter, the Maniers of the world, Philipsen, not Meus because he burned himself and dropped on the Eikenberg because he tried to lead out his teammates. Like, every one of those sprinters is super happy with this situation. And I'm thinking, okay, the only spot left is the Molenberg, right? And we come to the Molenberg, which is always a sprint to the Molenberg to get first row on this climb, because on the Molenberg, halfway through the peloton, there's always someone that has to step off the bike and walk up.
It always splits. Always.
Every single time.
It's narrow,
Always.
It's steep, yeah.
And firstly, Alpecin, fantastic job. Fast lining up, multiple rides at the front, Philipsen in a perfect position on the Molenberg. So even if his legs are shit at this point, the likelihood of him making the first split over the Molenberg is fantastic, the chances. So that's good. But when it comes to the other teams, I saw shit positions from Visma Lease bike, from UAE Team Emirates, and maybe one rider of both of those teams, Wellens, Jorgensen, were in a good position, but Wout van Aert, he was not there at the front on the Molenberg. And when a split happens, which it does, then you're kind of temporarily doomed.
Big split. And we're not talking like, oh, he wasn't P5.
Yep.
Visma had Campenaerts, Hagenes, Brennan, Benoit, Jorgensen. Let's not count Affini. They had 6 riders in the run into the Molenberg. And they're missing the Nathan van Hooijdonk or Tratnik. Tratnik ended in 2023. Tratnik ended his race almost just about before the Molenberg. 23. Because you have to be, they came through 3 rides in the first 6. and Campenarts and Benoit and Hagenes or whoever and Van Aert, they were just at the back. And when you're at the back on the Molenberg, and by the way, Alpecin don't block it. They split it.
Yep.
And not a split of 3 riders. A group of 30 forms with 4 Alpecin, with Manier for Quickstep. Wellens and Jorgensen, as you said, are the only ones represented. And it's not a disaster. Alpecin are very good.
Mm-hmm.
They're 2 domestiques plus Caden Grove. They're not going to bring Philipsen all the way to the finish across all these climbs. The problem is if another team starts pulling, Decathlon start pulling behind a little bit. But Van Aert, Benji, and we've seen this a lot from him in classics. Yeah. If you're gonna be sort of nonchalant with positioning, and then a split happens, the worst thing you can do is compound that by then panic chasing with Narvaez and Morgado in your wheel.
Exactly. But it's also on top of that, you said it's not an absolute disaster. I agree, it's not a complete disaster yet. But to me, this is also the exact zone where I'd want to be ahead of the sprinters instead of behind them. If you're Visma Leasebike, if you're UAE, it's not just those 2 teams. Even Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe, if you discount Meus, who they used too early, then those 3 teams would want to be ahead in this scenario. And instead, they're actually being outplayed by Alpecin, who is it? Like, how much is it the ability to not position here versus maybe a bit of a chicken shit strategy of, okay, I don't dare to go all out on the Molenberg yet?
Oh, I think it's not the legs because you have to, as I said, the tick box of climbs, like you just mentioned, you're losing another one where the sprinters normally get put on a gap, the Molenberg, and then they have to chase. So,
but if it's not the legs, you can still choose between whether it's the choice of not wanting to open it up from a Wout van Aert's camp or the inability to position for the actual climbs. Because we've spoken about Van Aert's positioning in the sprints 2 weeks ago. I felt like there was a bit of something like that going on as well before these cobble climbs. I haven't rewatched the run up to the Molenberg. I haven't rewatched the run up to the Eichenberg, but I felt like he was in a better position a kilometer before the Molenberg than at the foot of the Molenberg. Does that make sense?
This is not a this year problem. E3 last year. Who's opening the race with 0 teammates around him trying to anticipate? Jorgensen.
You think I know E3? Yeah, you're right.
True. Tour of Flanders, 100 k's to go. Who's opening the race? 0 teammates within a kilometer of him. Jorgensen. Jorgensen's just there, and there's no other Visma riders. And he's the strongest rider on the team. So it shouldn't even be him doing it. And he's now having to control a Kung anticipate. He's trying to manage now in a group of 30. Actually, it turned out well for him because Alpecin controlled that phase. And so actually he got to sit in the wheels. But if they weren't there could have been anticipations from loads of different teams.
I did see some criticism online towards Visma Leasebike for using Benoit and Wout van Aert to try and get back to the group of Jorgensen, but I kind of disagree with that. Yes, they're bringing other people back to the group of Jorgensen, but Jorgensen himself is very unlikely to win this race in the first place. So if you're Visma Leasebike, you'd rather have a bit more pawns on the chessboard to continue the race from that point onwards. So I actually think it's a good thing that they tried to close it down, but not necessarily as enthusiastically as they did it. Is that a way to say it?
So you can close it down. So Decathlon are pacing. There's 3 or 4 Visma in the group 2. They just let Decathlon pace.
Yeah.
And so what happens is we get to the Berendaries, Tarling's Court. Alpecin get to do the Berendaries because this is a really hard climb where Van Aert got dropped by Schoens last year. And they get to do that climb 15 seconds. These are not long climbs, 1 minute climbs. They get to do this climb like 15% slower. And Benoit launches it. Van Aert then pulls over the top. And Narvaez also, like, I guess Narvaez was playing the car. I have Wellens ahead. I don't need to chase. He didn't pull. I sort of also disagree with that. It's like, well, Wellens is also not going to win alone ahead. Yeah. But yeah, it's the other option was you just put Campenas and Benoit on the front to pull with Decathlon to control it and bring it. As I said, Alpecin probably weren't going to ride away if you control it.
Now, one detail I want to get out of the way before we continue. We did forget to mention that Arnaud Dely had a double mechanical earlier in the race. I think this was just before the Eikenberg. Am I wrong in that? Was fairly early in the race.
And they were so casual. They didn't change the bike. They changed the wheel, and he's giving a bid on away. And I was like, they're doing the lead out right now in the drag race to the climb.
Yep. And I was kind of surprised. Like, in that phase of the race that the lead will have a lot of cars to get behind and his way back to the peloton, but at least get one rider to him, right? Like, there were no teammates coming back for him. And I felt like he needed at least someone to help him go from car to car. Your best position is first behind the car. But then if you're not behind the car, you at least want a teammate, no?
Yeah, I was really surprised. It was like they didn't expect it. And then, he had to chase. And I was like, you're gone. Like, your race is over. Because the race is going to split on the Eikenberg and you're going to be behind like really weak riders.
But I got to say, it was pretty funny to see Lascano standing still on a cobble climb again on the Molenberg.
Yeah.
The memories of the Koppenberg last year, they will never disappear. And we spoke about the group of Van Aert now trying to come back to the front. We got to keep in mind the breakaway that was ahead is getting caught. Tarling that was ahead is getting caught, all by that Alpecin group. And we're now settling ourselves into the last 30 kilometers where on the Berendries, that second group with Van Aert really makes the real move to try and close it down. With Benoit leading out on the climb itself, after the climb, trying to continue towards closing it. Eventually, they do make it back. But in the process, Mr. Arnaud Delis, who lost quite a bit of energy in the return before the Eikenberg, ends up dropping completely. And even with that mechanical in mind, I don't see a Delis that was strong enough to remotely compete for Omloop today.
No. And now there's 15 minutes, Benji. We're talking about checklists. Berendries is maybe the third last, if you don't count the Vossen whatever.
We're not counting the Vossen hole.
We're not counting it?
No.
We now have 20 minutes of literal flat to the Muur.
Yeah.
So you now have 2 climbs left to get to Nurse, Phillips and Manier over Quickstep, Alpecin, absolute blinder. Not only that, they've had an easier race than some of the Narvaez, the Van Aerts of the world. They've been able to do the Berendries slower. They've done the Molenberg in better position. So for Quickstep and Alpecin, the race is going absolutely perfect. I got to say, I haven't rewatched it. I don't know which group Soren Varenskog was in, Benji, at this time.
I actually don't know.
Or Rasmus Tiller or other sprinters.
Tiller fell throughout the race in a ditch. That's the only thing I know.
Yeah, Vacek was looking really good.
Yes.
But Alpecin basically stopped any anticipations happening in this fight. I was really expecting, as I'll repeat the names, Wright, Morich, Kung, not Van Baarle, Jorgensen. These are the names. UAE, Morgado. I think he did actually jump on time when he came back, because he did jump on time. But I was expecting this to begin, and it actually didn't happen at all before the Muur.
Well, I agree with you, but I also would like to give some credit to Quickstep, who was also doing the same as Alpecin for Manier. It was kind of a dual combination of those two teams trying to control what's happening. And on one end, I understand that some people might say, oh, why is Quickstep doing Alpecin's work? But at the end of the day, they have Manier, and it's their only opportunity to win this race. Their only competitive rider in this race. So I'm perfectly fine with them doing whatever at this point to get Manier to the best possible scenario for a potential sprint in this race. But you said it, the last 2 climbs are coming. The Muur van Gerardsbergen, where Patrick Lanterne Rouge dropped Benji last year, very, very sad event. I feel like that's a traumatic event in my life. I wanna forget who was gonna drop who in the peloton. And I gotta say, Muur van Gerardsbergen starts. Just before the starts, Jan Tratnik, mechanical, wasn't really expecting much from Tratnik after the Muur anyway. There's always an opportunity he gets in a similar scenario as last year, though, so you can't severely count him out. But either way, we get on the climb, and there's 2 riders that look super strong on this climb. Tim Wellens, as always, on the Muur, every single year, he's there. But also, Matthias Vacek was super impressive, dude. And this guy isn't super light. Like, he's just a super versatile rider with a massive engine, can get over cobbles, can climb relatively well, has a little bit of a sprint as well. This guy can do everything. I absolutely love this rider. And Philipsen in position 4, my friend. What were your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts were, this is a big shame for these non-sprinters, where you see Jorgensen, Vacek, as you say, and then Philipsen's right there in their wheel. They're not going away from anybody. So, but the problem for Philipsen is he's going across with a group of 10, but now he's isolated. The Alpecin domestiques have worked and done a really good job, but same with Manier, if he even was in that group. There's not multiple quick-steppers, and so you've got Narvaez, Velens, Jorgensen, Van Aert, who actually look better on the Muur. I don't know if there was two Treks. Trek also strange. Trek, Visma, Bora, UAE, very strange races today. Like Trek finished with 3 in the front group today, and didn't anticipate once outside of Vatsek pacing on the climbs, which is fair enough. He tried to create a split. So we get to the zone before the Bosberg.
Yeah.
I can't remember what happened before the Bosberg, Benji.
So basically,
did anyone
group
jump?
of 15-ish riders together, and there were some moves, but also some moves behind. Like the likes of Pidcock, Morgado missed the split on the Muur van Gerardsbergen. They were trying to get back to the group ahead. That group ahead had included Van Aert, Jorgensen, whatever, but also Manier Philipsen. Philipsen without teammates, though, which makes it interesting. And the phase before the Bosbergs, I feel like Jorgensen was keeping it together. Jorgensen kept himself at the front.
And Jorgensen starts riding as a domestique and like keeping it together with Philipsen in the group.
In my opinion, Visma Leasebike should have played it better, where they should have already before the Bosberg started rolling attacks. They did later after the Bosberg. But at that point, well, it's also still a good point to do so.
Wellens is an ally.
Exactly. It's an ally because at the end of the day, if Jorgensen goes to a sprint with Wellens, who's your money on 1v1?
I don't know, 60, 40, 40, 60, 30, 70, 70, 30. It's a higher chance than Van Aert in a group of 20.
Exactly.
Or against Philipsen or Manier.
Especially with the sprints we've seen from Van Aert this year. Like,
Benji, how many bunch sprints he won since COVID?
Well, I don't know. Was that Tirreno sprint before COVID or after COVID? Against the legendary Caleb Ewan.
But the thing is, it's like Velens, I mean, yeah, it's a coin flip, but it's like...
Yeah.
And I actually think that was that then after the Bosberg when it was all kept together, and then there was a group that always comes back quickly, but there was then an attacking phase after the Bosberg, and I think that's what Van Aert realized. I can't go to a sprint with Philipsen. Also, Philipsen was isolated, so Jorgensen and Van Aert start jumping. Then they get countered. Stefan Kung goes, and basically he looks, I was like, this is Stefan Kung's moment. He's been waiting for this sort of race situation. It's the perfect race situation for him, and finally it happens, and he looks good, and there's a lull in the group behind.
Yeah, there's a lull in the group behind, and there were a few moves to try and bridge towards Kung, but I don't remember each rider that did. At a certain point, Van Dijken went with someone, don't remember who that was, and then a bit later, a Tudor rider also tried to jump there, but I feel like Jorgensen was kind of closing them down, and then eventually also kept pulling to try and get Kung back, but then we also saw at the same exact moment, like the helicopter shot that reveals all. I love those like shots that suddenly like show a helicopter shot and then you see like a group behind that's like really close. That started happening because the big group that got caught behind on the Muur van Gerardsbergen was actually starting to come back to the Wout van Aert group here, to the Philipsen group. So we saw that group getting closer, catching that group, which means it's now Kung versus a peloton with multiple teams that have sprinters there. They don't necessarily have 10 teammates each, obviously, because they don't have 10 at the start either, but they still have enough that if they combine the workload together here, Kung's going to have a lot of trouble bringing this home. And that's exactly what starts happening. Jonas Abrahamsen does a fantastic job in this phase to try and close down Stefan Kung to get it with a bunch of other riders. Johnny Vermeers, who's also been very active in the majority of the race, but no one went to the front again. Sorry, what?
Yves Lampard for Manier.
Yes. So we get this like collaboration of teams who know that if you're not at the front, they can't win this race. Like at this point, every team that has a limited chance
you're not
of
weighing
winning,
up, oh, my sprint is better than your sprinter, so you pull. It's like, no, we all pull, otherwise we don't win.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happens. And Stefan Kung gets caught with a kilometer to go. And then it's looking at the sprinters and the leadouts. I see on one side of the road, Jasper Philipsen in the wheel of Wout van Aert. Based on the positioning of the last 2 weeks, that's a bit of a dangerous position to be in. Manier's kind of boxed him a little bit. I had no clear view of where he was at a certain point. Who did you have your eyes on?
I was looking at, there was a Philipsen, Manier, Van Aert collective, and then they tried to come up the left-hand side of the peloton the long way on the wheel of initially Pollitt did a lead out, and then Vasek opens up, and they tried to open up on the left-hand side. Philipsen and Manier, I'm kind of, to be honest, I was just looking at them. Like, I was just looking in the middle, and then I looked to the barrier. I'm like, holy shit, there's a rider sort of in line with them as well. And we have what looks like a photo finish between Philipsen and Manier in the center, but also the Uno X rider is very, very close, and it's Søren Varenshold, and he wins Omloop Nieuwsblad, which kind of felt like a throwback race. This felt like a mid-2010s classic where the sprinters really have a chance, where the super teams don't have it all their way and get to dictate the terms of the race, and a big classic sprinter gets the win. So really unpredictable race, I would say. Like last year, it was crazy how quickly the group came back, but then in anticipation did still, a really late move still won. Like, really unpredictable. You never really knew who was exactly in each group. I think a lot of teams will be regretting not bringing a classic sprinter or riding for their classic sprinter in this race.
Like, if I go over the teams in this race, I think Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe fucked up in their strategy to not go for Meus. But next to that, I think Visma Leasebike can't be happy about their day either. Like, their positioning before climbs wasn't there. It was like half of their team wasn't really in the race. Jorgensen was completely on point. Absolute credits to him. That's for sure. Now, Alpecin de Koning, fantastic ride. Putting Jasper Phillips in the perfect position to win this race. Ideal. Yes, it helped that the other teams fucked up, in my opinion. But Jasper Philipsen might not have won that sprint, but he definitely shows the form to me to get over the Poggio in a similar position as last year and to fight for a monument victory in the next 2 months. Yeah. So, classics-wise, he looks really good. Did he not have the speed today? Correct. But I still saw very good form from Philipsen today. And then I look at Slow Quickstep, great strategy to go all out for Manier. Well done. Yeah. I look at UAE Team Emirates. I'm sorry, but Wellens was strong in the final, but at the end of the day, their strength is as a collective, and the collective was not there today. So, also a failure of a team today. And it feels like all the big teams in this race failed.
The 4 strongest teams, we all thought the 4 strongest teams were UAE, Visma, Bora, Trek, and they got outclassed by some Dutch-speaking lads who get paid a shitload less money than them. That's what happened. Guys who are not stars, Dries van Gestel, Pepperin Reinderink, fucking Oscar Riesebeek, Zandro Murasa, when it mattered, their plan for their sprinter, they were in position and they dictated the hill phase when actually they should have been getting worked over their sprinters. And yeah, really, really impressive from Alpecin and Quickstep. In the end, Søren Varenshold wins. I do have to watch the tape to see where I don't think he was in the first 5 positions on the Moor, but we know in Omloop he can come back very, very quickly. So also shout out to Ineos.
Yes.
It shouldn't have just been Josh Tarling anticipating there. It should have been a whole host of other riders. And then if you get with Josh, if Van Dijk, Strandhagenes, Tarling, Vatsek, good luck, sprinters teams, controlling that then in that phase of the race. And so I think, but I think Ineos had a good race. And you look at their sprint, was it Watson opened up early?
Yes.
I'll just read out the top 10. Varenshold ahead of Manier. He comes out of the wheel of Philipsen late. I think Philipsen's sprint was actually quite good. Van Moor 4th. Like, that's a crazy result for him and Lotto. Sam Watson 5th. He opened up early. Yeah.
That's better than Billy would have done in that sprint.
Probably, yeah. Lucas Kubish 6th for Unibet Tietema Rockets. He was in good shape at Provence. Piet Allegart 7th for Cofidis. Albanese and Vandenberg 8 and 9 for EF. Lewis Askey 10th. I would say FDJ did as well as they could. They nearly won. So, and yeah, Ineos, they got to be happy. First major classic for their new young British classics rider. He comes 5th. They got to be happy.
Yeah, a massive surprise winner of the race, Søren Varenshold. This is this is undoubtedly the biggest win of this team, right? They had a Dauphiné stage win with Kort Nielsen, but Omloop's bigger than the Dauphiné stage, for sure, right? How does the non-Belgian world see that?
Yeah. Especially for a Northern European team like this. They're a classics-focused team.
The last week, I've been roasted left and right for defending Omloop and its stature within the cycling world. Omloop's a huge race in Belgium, but I see that from a Belgian perspective and see it as a huge race, and like Belgium sees Omloop as the start of the cycling season. Now, internationally, it's then odd for the cycling world whenever I talk to someone to be like, oh, it's kind of just like one of the little World Tour classics in Belgium. Like E3 is like 10 times better. In Belgium, E3 is considered big, but not considered 10 times bigger as Omloop.
Omloop is like, yeah, for a team like this, maybe not for an Italian team or something, this is a huge race. So
I think Bargiani would like to win it though.
Well, they're not on the start list. So yeah, I would say this was very unpredictable. I think it's really nice to see a pro team win, pro Conti team. It's cool to see a different winner. It's cool to see Quick step back, to be honest. Like with a spearhead, and it's nice to see the big budget super teams getting worked over by good tactics, by positioning. So yeah, a great race.
But I gotta be honest, seeing how Alpecin was so strong today without Mr. Van der Poel in the race.
Oh yeah, Roubaix.
I gotta imagine if you are Mathieu Van der Poel watching today's Omloop Nieuwsblad and you see how these other top budget teams are doing without Mathieu Van der Poel in the race, what are you thinking? Like, I'd be thinking. Sorry, go ahead.
If I'm Van der Poel, then I'm thinking, if the other top guys are going to sit at the back of the peloton all day, then I'll just pick a moment and go clear with Gianni Vermeersch, create a split of 15, get Gianni to pull all out for 20 minutes. See you later.
Like, if you're Van der Poel, you saw nothing that scares you today. If anything, you feel a lot better than yesterday. Because yesterday you had some doubts. You weren't sure whether a competitor would show up and be huge. Now, Philipsen plus Van der Poel for the monuments, it's starting to look really good for an MSR, for a Roubaix. In RVV, Philipsen won't be there, but the team around Philipsen today was super strong. So it's once again going to be about whether these other teams can get their shit together and find a way to anticipate early is maybe a weird thing to say, but technically anticipate early, because I'm sorry, but the Wout van Aert I saw today, it's still Omloop. And in the history of cycling, not a single rider who won Omloop won RVV. So it's not a perfect indicator for Tour of Flanders, but the Wout van Aert I saw today is nothing compared to Van der Poel at RVV.
I mean, well, yeah, Van der Poel, when Van der Poel wants to solve a problem, let's look about Tour of Flanders last year. Van der Poel had a problem. There was a group of 12, and I'm pretty sure Van der Poel just bridged across himself, Benji. Solo, and then was just in the group. Like when Van der Poel and Pogačar press go, no one else can follow. Most of the time. So if you're Van der Poel seeing Jorgensen and Van Aert not able to sort of get separation or create splits of 2 or 3, you're not very worried, are you? And as you said, there's also not De Lee's not becoming the next Tom Bonen. Like it's the same as before. Pithy wasn't here. I would have been keen to see how Pithy raced, actually. I think he should have been here.
Yeah.
So I still think a very, very good addition. That's one I'm going to rewatch because it's such an unexpected winner, and even like Brent Van Moor and Watson 4th and 5th is entertaining. So, yeah.
It's intriguing. I think we would see this as an addition that we'd like rewatching. I think maybe mainstream cycling fans might be like, okay, that was maybe a bit of a passive, boring race. Because I feel like that's going to be like the mainstream thought, though, after this race, where I was actually kind of okay with it. I enjoyed the race. It was definitely more passive than I expected in the hill zone. That's because certain teams weren't up to the standard I was expecting them to be. But that opens up opportunities for other teams and a race scenario that we might not have seen coming as much. Because I felt like before the race started, sprinters have a chance, but I was expecting it to come from attacks in the hill zone to spice up the race completely. And that definitely did not happen. And to see Søren's Warenskjold take the victory here, I think that's fantastic. Now, is this on the same level as Nick Nuyens winning the Tour of Flanders after Cancellara melts on the muur van Gerardsbergen? No, but I still enjoyed it, you know?
Oh, I enjoyed this race. It was a good race to watch.
Yeah.
It's just because when something's different, you're like, hold on. Albertson have got UAE and Visma on the back foot here in the hill zone with their sprinter. They flipped the script. Anyway, we got Kerner tomorrow. Anything change your mind for Kerner tomorrow, Benji? I think what makes it clear is if you're Visma, you can't go to a sprint with they got Coy. But Philipsen, I mean, is there any guarantee that Albertson tomorrow, Benji, Philipsen might not be on that big a gap? Like, if they just ride conservative over the hill zone and keep riders together to chase, he's not going to be on 4 minutes.
No, definitely not. Definitely not with the form I saw today in Omloop. Now, does it maybe affect him that he rode Omloop tomorrow? That's possible. Like, he could have overextended a little bit in this race, but at the end of the day, he was in a winning position. He ended up not winning. It was still worth it. Now, like you say, Visma's kind of in this intertwined position of, you've got Coy, who on paper has a bit of trouble beating Jonathan Milan if it comes down to a 1v1 sprint at the end. If Milan also survives. Go ahead.
Who's the sprinter that Jonathan Milan said he's most scared of?
So I was like, "Oh, you're not scared of Merlier the most?"
Coy.
I was kind of surprised. Coy. I was surprised he said Coy. It was in Eurosport Italia. I think there was an interview for the people that don't know.
Where hasn't Merlier beaten you like fucking 10 times in the last 18 months?
I was surprised he said Coy. I was like, is it because he, psychology-wise, doesn't want to say Merlier?
I think it's because when he gets his sprint right, like Coy can just be like in the wheel and dart out really late. And I think he's like an annoying guy to sprint against because of his positioning. I don't know. Yeah, it could be that he's like doesn't want to big up the GOAT Tim Merlier. Maybe it was recorded a year ago. I don't know. But yeah, it's going to be interesting tomorrow. We've got Bora have to go for Mayus. I would say it's going to open in the hill zone. UAE with Visma. Like UAE don't have a sprinter, so they have to open. And Velens, I mean, he dropped everybody with Morich in the 2023 Kerner in the last hill zone. He dropped everybody, and just then the groups came back a little bit to him when Benoit won. But yeah, like UAE will go all out in the hills. I think Tratnik and the Van Dykes will follow. Lascano also. I don't know. I actually can't predict what Bora will do.
Ooh, sorry, but if I'm sorry. Like if they use Meus to lead out the rest in Omloop for the sake of saving him for Kuurne, they better ride for him on Kuurne, in my opinion. Like, you can use Van Dijk and Tratnik to follow moves, but my go-to card would be Meus in this race. And especially because there's so many teams with sprinters here as well. Like, if you look at, even Visma will be half-halving it. Yes, they will probably attack with the majority of their team, but Olaf Koy will always stay in the back of their mind. If he survives, they might have him as a backup. Alpecin is going to go for Philipsen, in my personal opinion. Then we see the likes of Quickstep. Actually, interesting, they've got Merlier here, no Manier, which would have been a cool combination if both were there for the sake of having the pure sprinter and then the versatile sprinter. I understand that they would ride all out for Merlier though in a race. So for me, Quickstep is also all out for Merlier tomorrow.
Yeah, because Manier actually had a really good run at the line today out of the wheel of Philipsen, and like Merlier from that position is quicker. So he's a quick sprinter.
UAE, all out attacking tomorrow.
Yep.
Lotto attacking because the lead's not even there in Kuurne. Still weird decision. And according to his start list on Pro Cycling Stats, which I don't know how accurate it is, he is actually not riding La Sama anymore and isn't and added Classic Brugge de Panne to his schedule. So I understand even less why the Lee is not at Kuurne.
That's strange. But yeah, I think it's going to be another cat and mouse game between the sprinters and the attackers tomorrow. I don't think it's going to be such a big gap like with Lascano, Wellens, and Van Aert last year, where it was pretty much done at 70 k's to go. I think it's going to be a real fight tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to it. In the women's Omloop, I should say I think Johnny Milan wins tomorrow. In the women's Omloop, even stranger things happened. Super strange things. We have the biggest, I don't know whether it's called ego or bluffing, but basically FDJ Suez are here with Demi Vollering, who is going to be the strongest on the climbs based on what we saw in Valencia. SD Works are here with Vibes, who is going to be the fastest sprinter if it comes to a finish, because she is the fastest sprinter. And they both have a good option and a good chance to win the race. Both have a good chance to win, depending on the race situation. The breakaway initially went to 13 minutes. Is that correct, Benji?
Yes, the breakaway went up to 13 minutes with 50 kilometers to go. If that's in men's Omloop, I think race is over. In women's Omloop, it's a bit of a different dynamic where if some of the top riders go to the front and their teams really start pacing, then maybe it's still salvageable. And we see that scenario happening. First of all, in the breakaway, Elena Pirone, which is a rider on Roland, which is that team that was Roland Koyas, if I recall correctly, then IPT or Israel kind of came in to make that their women's team, and now it's back to Roland, so seemingly that project didn't really work out the way they wanted. So that's a rider in the breakaway. Lotte Klaas for Arkea B&B Hotels. Orela Nedlo, Polish rider for Windspace Orange Seal, also a pro team, is in this breakaway too. Then Julie Stockman from DD Group Pro Cycling, a UCI Continental team, and Mickey Dox, who is the more renowned name in this breakaway for Lotto. But I'm looking at this breakaway and I think, sorry, full respect to these riders. These riders have done a fantastic job in the breakaway today. But if we're being realistic, how much effort would it cost how much investment from a team would it cost to control a breakaway like this in a stage?
It really doesn't. No offense to them. No offense to them. But not all of the riders starting, 6 riders on SD Works or FDJ, have much other purpose. No offense, but they are not making it over the Moor. Not even close. They're not even close. They're not going to make it. When the women go on a climb that hard, it completely splinters the race. So they have. It's not like in the men's Moor where the group of Kung and Van Aert and co went, and then the domestiques of the sprinters teams were a bit behind. They're still kind of close. When Vollering and Nuvidoma, those riders press go, the race explodes. And yeah, I don't. Now, FDJ did start, so I'm just seeing they did start with one less rider. Guadzini didn't start, and she is their engine. But yeah, Amber Kraak, Los Argeest. Those two, they are good riders. And if they get on the front with another rider of SD Works, pick a rider, I don't care who, that isn't going to make it over the Moor, they will, even without killing themselves, they will easily control the breakaway.
I agree. Maybe Femke Marcus, that kind of top rider, Elena Cecchini, there's definitely strength enough there for that to happen. But it's also, they were simply in a bluffing method today, both of those teams. If we look at last year, SD Works was the team with Vollering, Kopecky, and Wiebes at the start line of the Classics. In that scenario, it's all down to SD Works to do the pacing. And as a consequence, the other teams should not do any pacing. They should make sure that they make the race as hard as possible for SD Works to control groups that attack, etc. And in doing so, putting their own riders in favor. But 2025 is different. They've got one of those 3 riders at the start line here. At Omloop, there's only Wiebes when it comes to SD Works. Vollering now has FDJ Suez as our team. I gotta say, in this scenario, I actually blame FDJ Suez a little bit more than SD Works. Yes, FDJ Suez paced for 7 to 10 kilometers. I'll go through it exactly right now. So, gap is 13 minutes with 50k to go. From that point onwards, Ellen van Dijk from Little Trek goes to the front and paces 13 minutes down to 6 minutes. She takes 7 minutes of the gap. Meanwhile, lots of riders are trying to attack left and right, the likes of Franziska Koch, Christina Schweinberger. I'm sorry, but where are you attacking to? The gap is 6 minutes. So I don't see the value in that necessarily either. But Van Dijk keeps controlling until the gap is 6 minutes. Then the gap grows again to 7 minutes before 23 kilometers to go. So there's these moments where just the peloton just doesn't start contributing again. And it's not even really down to Little Trek to really control everything here. So in my opinion, from that point onwards, by the way, with 23-ish kilometers to go, we do see FDJ Suez before the Muur come to the front with 1 or 2 riders and start pacing. I'm sorry, that's not enough. You're bluffing the majority of the race. You let the gap explode. Your rider, Demi Vollering, is the biggest rider at the start line. In my opinion, a bigger chance of winning than Lorena Wiebes. And I understand SD Works bluff a little bit more, not completely, a little bit more than FDJ Suez. You just can't bluff that much if you literally have the favorite.
Yeah, if you got the rider with a 50% chance to win the race, you should pace. And that applies to both the teams. So it really, I don't know what point they were trying to prove, because it doesn't, you're not saving your teammates' legs. You're not proving any point. Like, all you prove is that you just don't win this race. Like, sometimes cycling's not very complicated. It's like with UAE with Pogacar, they don't need some fancy whiz-bang race plan. No, you just control the brake and then you launch him on the hardest point of the race and he'll probably win. And Demi's kind of similar with the women's.
Do you think we're going to see similar let's say hypothetically, men's cycling also decides to reduce the amount of riders that start each race, because in women's cycling, it's on paper 6 riders per team now in these classics. In men's cycling, it's still 7. Would we see similar bluffing strategies if men's teams were also down to 6 riders?
Yeah, 6 or 5 riders, because then you don't have Bjerg or Affini and you just say, well, they're not going to make it over the Muur.
Mm-hmm.
So they can just control the brake and, yeah, put the race in play for us. And even when in Lombardia, for example, the teams are so strong, a group of every second-tier favourite attacked and UAE controlled it easily. So it's just different. And I don't understand it. I don't, like, just do your race sometimes. Yeah. I don't understand it. Because also,
too much about the
FDJ
competition
should be making the race hard for Demi.
Yeah.
So that when she goes clear, or when she attacks, she has a higher chance of going clear from Wiebes.
Yep.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
Very strange. Anyway, we should speak more about the breakaway. They basically have, with 20 Ks to go, 6 minutes still, 5 minutes still. And even if they start collapsing, you're not going to close 6 minutes in half an hour or in 35 minutes. And especially with, it's only 2 climbs and mostly flat to the finish. And Lotte Klaes and Arella Nerlo go clear. They can't drop it or shake each other on the Muur or the Bosberg. I can't tell. I thought Nerlo, the Polish rider, I thought she was the stronger one. Klaes seemed to be struggling a little bit on the uphills. Behind them, we still don't trust the gaps exactly. Like, you wouldn't bet your life savings on the gaps in some of these races, particularly in the run into the Muur. It can change very quickly, but we see, it really is 4 minutes. FDJ Lebu launches Vollering on the Muur. She drops everybody except Puck Petersen. Cassia Nevidone was able to follow her for a little bit, but it's too late. It's too late. You're not going to close in 15 Ks or 16 Ks, 4 minutes. And Lotte Klaes and Nerlo go to the finish together. Pironi, somewhere in the middle, was eventually caught by the peloton, and Nerlo begins her sprint at 550 meters from the front. Klaes was kind of cooked.
Was it 550 meters? I swear it was longer.
Further. It might have been
I swear it was like 800 meters to go.
Because Klaes was shocked. Done. Like, Nerlo was stronger.
So we see that move. Nerlo starts her sprint, 800 meters to go. I wasn't sure. It kind of looked like an attack that just kept going, that turned into eventually being the sprint. And she stayed at the front for so long, and it looked like Lotte Klaes was dying 1,000 deaths trying to remotely close this down. She stayed on 2 meters the entire time. But there was something there where I was like, Can she get back to the wheel? If she can get in the draft, maybe something can happen here. But Nerlo just kept sprinting, and we're talking sitting down, trying to go again, sitting down, trying to go again. Both of those riders trying to do exactly that. This is some of the weirdest sprint I've seen in a very long time. And I loved it because it was just such a long sprint, so powerful. And we enter the last 250 meters, and then we start seeing who is going to win the race. Tell me more.
Yeah, we see Klaas, who I thought was nearly off the wheel at one point when Nerlo initially started, but just gets such the benefit of the draft that she's able to come out of the wheel. And Lotte Klaas wins Omloop Nieuwsblad for Arkea B&B Hotels Women, which, again, it's a pro team, not a world team. Surely their biggest. I mean, I don't know the history of Arkea's women's team too much. I'm now quickly looking through.
Yes, the answer is definitely yes.
They've never... Yeah, they win usually like 2 races a year at .2 level and maybe a .1, and now they win Omloop from the early break. Absolutely crazy. By far their biggest win. They actually have quite a few good riders coming through, they did have Squibon. Yeah, like Lotte Klaas, but also like Valentina Cavallard, like Asensio. But yeah, crazy result. I think we've not seen the end of Demi, FDJ Suez, and SD Works beef. That's only heating up based on today. That they would rather see the other lose than they win. Which, yeah, is illogical, but yeah.
But it's like, it's also so great. I love these kind of scenarios every now and then, though, because if you look at the top of rider Lotte Klaas is, she's 31. She started her career professionally at Dolcini van Eyck back in the day in 2021, which was that continental team. And then from that point onwards, she went to a couple of teams that were also at continental level, eventually made her way to Arkea. And she now wins Omloop Nieuwsblad, which undoubtedly will be her only opportunity at that level, in my opinion. That's not disrespect to her. She just won Omloop Nieuwsblad, taking the opportunity she got. It's very unlikely that opportunity will happen again, but this makes her entire career. Like, this is insane. And I wonder from these riders in the breakaway, there's a couple of pro team riders in there that have a pro contract. There's a couple of Conti riders in there. I wonder if those Conti riders in that breakaway, are they all full-time cyclists? And they had an opportunity to win Omloop Nieuwsblad.
Yeah, it's like after the race, Klaas still kind of couldn't believe that she'd won. Like, she hadn't clicked. Nerlo also almost didn't seem like she knew they were fighting it out for the win, and she was obviously very emotional at the finish. Apparently there might have been some race radio issues a la the Olympics, but still, yeah, Vollering wins the sprint head-to-head against Peterson for third. She gets on the podium, and the Wiebes wins the bunch sprint behind, 10 seconds behind for fifth, ahead of Gasparini, Giorgi, Copponi, Plomas, and Van Pachtenbecher. So Wiebes and Vollering leave empty-handed, and maybe Benji, the break was just a lot stronger than they anticipated. Maybe just the break was actually really good today.
It was the breakaway won out of their own strength, but also, in my opinion, because the peloton fucked up. And then I point mostly towards FDJ Suez and also a little bit towards SD Works. The combination of those teams are, for me, the failing factor in today's race. And at the end of the day, I'm happy the break won. They deserved it. And I do have to add, I haven't really said this yet, and I don't want to come over harshly, but at the end of the day, in my opinion, if Orella Nerlo plays that sprint more intelligently, more tactically, and doesn't launch with 800 meters to go, in my opinion, she was the strongest that would have won this race. And that's maybe a bit harsh to say because this is her opportunity of a lifetime to do that, but doesn't make it less true, you know?
Yeah. Still, it's on a Palmares forever, and eventually people won't say, oh, well, the other team should have paced. It's on a Palmares forever until next year's Omloop. So both very unpredictable winners, and I think the headwind, definitely in the men's, played a big role. Tomorrow for the women, they don't have Kerner, but they do Omloop van het Hageland instead, which is like their Kerner sort of. Well, it's a 1.1. It's not a World Tour race, hilly circuit. So they, but it's not as strong a start list as we would expect in the men's. Still not confirmed teams for a lot of the riders, but Peterson is there. I don't think FDJ Suez do it, so there is no Demi. And SD Works don't have Vibers on the start list, somewhat surprisingly. Charlotte Cole's there. So that could be a sprint. Could be some attackers.
I will royally request Belgian cycling to get better. We have discussed, I know that it's a bit weird saying that after Lotte Klaas win Omloop Nieuwsblad. That's not what I mean. What I mean is, we've spoken about Belgian ChatGPT races for so long, with races that sound exactly the same. I'm sorry, there's a Dwars door het Gageland, there's an Omloop van het Gageland. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? I'm sorry, how am I supposed to remember whether I should type into Pro Cycling Stats Dwars or Omloop van het Gageland? And when I type in Gageland, the chat function doesn't find it. That's also partially on the chat function, but it's also on the fact that all these races sound exactly the same because their name's the same. There's one word difference.
Sounds like I converted you with the search function issues, Benji.
Yes. Oh, I need AI to find my correct.
So it's the PCS one.
That's
sometimes.
The conclusion,
I'll
right?
literally type in like Mauri van Zevenon, Van den Van Bachterbecher, like literally everything perfect, and then it will suggest like Fergus Browning. I'm like, what? And then I click enter when the preset goes at Fergus Browning. I'm like, hello? Anyway, I type
in Van Poppel and it gives no results found.
The worst is when you look up someone like fucking Garcia and you're like, oh, there's going to be a million of these guys.
With all these accents. And if you don't get the right accent right, the autocomplete doesn't work.
Yeah, Luke says maybe they need AI search function. I can never find a race. Like, elsewhere, we had Fornardesh Classic. We're not finished with drama and random shit happening. This is cycling after all. Fornardesh Classic, beautiful 1.pro in the Chile Ardèche region before Drôme Classic tomorrow. This has the longer climb closer to the finish, the Saint-Romain-de-l'Eure, 6.3k, 7.4%. Crest 21k from the finish, and then the Val d'Enfer, 1500 meters, 10.5%. That crest 6.5k's from the finish. We got a longer 18-minute climb where Brandon McNulty obliterated everybody in 2022, big watts, and then went solo. And then we have a punchy climb where Mark Hirschi and Gregoire type operators really come into play if they can survive that far. And indeed, UAE had a really strong hill squad. Ayuso, McNulty, Kristen, Del Toro, Arietta. Tudor had Brenner and Hirschi as their combo. Valentin Paripantra was here. Gregoire, Schkelmoser, really, really good start list. And indeed, it was all out attacks on Saint-Romain-de-l'Eure. In fact, they all sort of neutralized each other. UAE not as dominant. In fact, it was other riders and Trek really taking it up a lot of the race. And FDJ were confident in Gregoire. We get to the punchy Inferno climb, and still no one. No, it was Fortunato, Astana. Fortunato was clear. He dropped, and Enrique was in the middle. Brenner pulls it back for Hirschi sprint. I feel like Brenner could have won today. He could have won, actually. He was so strong, but they sort of went all out for a Hirschi sprint, which I'm not sure I agree with. Anyway, he closed it down. We get to a sprint between three Astanas. Who was it? Scaroni, Champoussin, Fortunato, the familiar suspects, Schkelmoser, Romo, McNulty, Ayuso, Brenner, and Hirschi. And in the last roundabout, they all go the wrong way, except Gregoire. And because he's a French rider winning, we ain't neutralizing the race today, baby. Win stance. Gregoire wins ahead of Marco Brenner, who the guy who was doing the lead out for 15Ks. He's been unbelievably good this spring so far. Fortunato third, Champoussin fourth, Scaroni fifth. Count it up. That's 310 UCI points for Astana, baby, from the top five. And yeah, I'm happy to see Gregoire win because I'm pretty sure.
No shit.
You called him a winless fuck in the FDJ preview, Benji.
I would never say such a thing.
I think I did.
No, you said he would win, actually. You picked Gregoire for the victory on this race.
What?
Yes, you did.
Holy
That's why
shit.
I'm so salty that they they didn't do the Ghana treatment to him.
I reckon he probably would have won because he lost the sprint here to Ayuso in a 3-up
Sure,
sprint last year.
He probably would have won if it didn't happen either.
Yeah, well, read the parkour. I mean, no, all these riders have done this race 4 times. They've all done it.
They passed the finish line before the finish line.
Well, because the helicopter like freaked out where it was showing. I was like, what's he doing? Show the race. And he's like, no, I was showing where they were supposed to go, dude. And they all went into a car park.
I gotta say, it was really confusing for us as a viewer because the helicopter shot was like showing what was happening, but it like followed the riders. And then the helicopter had like this, like, you know what that mean of like panique, that kind of vibe? It felt like the helicopter camera controller had the same thing because suddenly he was like shaking all over the place, looking at the sky. And I had no clue what was happening. So we suddenly saw that bunch of UAE riders looked really confused. And because they rode the wrong way, I'd be pretty confused as well. Because what seems like the case is that they followed the motorbike off course once again, similar fashion. I can't confirm much based on the video images I saw. I don't know whether it was signaled well, etc. The only thing I can say is that Gregoire rode the right way. He ended up winning the race. And this time, they didn't do the Filippo Ganna treatment to Gregoire. So this time, the victory stays for Gregoire, which Ganna should rightfully be salty about. Because that's the inconsistency on that decision is ridiculous to me. I don't say that Gregoire's victory should be taken away. I'm saying that it makes it look even more shit that Ganna's was taken away in the first place.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe because it was a stage race and this is a one-day race and they didn't want to make the GC gaps. They didn't know what to do with the GC gaps, whereas here it's a one-day. But yeah, I knew they weren't going to neutralize it. And yeah, Shkelmoza, Roma, McNulty, Masayuso, it through the... did Hirschi even have a result? Hirschi just stopped. He finished on 150. He just stopped and was like, fuck this.
I would too, to be honest.
I would too, yeah. Especially as Brenner like had put in so much. So really good race. Again, look at the top 5 here. Groupama, Tudor, Astana. We're not just in Mallorca anymore. And yeah, some of the other teams are having... I mean, I hope this is a sign of things to come, Benji, because last year there was not enough parity. I just feel... I thought UAE were going to do what they wanted today in this race.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Are you talking about...
Like, I thought McNulty or Kristen would go clear on Saint-Romain-de-Lerp. The others would block behind, and it would be over at 30 Ks to go.
Fair. I agree with you on that, but I must say, to me, I actually find it sad sometimes that the most viral moments in cycling are often the ones where the sport looks really pathetic. Like the Algarve one, Opiomi, all those kind of events. I'd rather have the sport go viral for better things than that. So it's a different answer to what you're saying, but do you have that feeling sometimes too?
Yeah, exactly. Like crashes or, yeah, comical stuff, like a Monty Python sketch. And it's happening too much. And listen, I think the riders here, I don't want to be a victim blamer, but
yeah,
I think they just went the wrong way. Maybe again, we didn't really see what happened. But yeah, Gregoire, great shape. And is this the biggest win of his career? I think it's bigger than a Basque stage for a French rider.
Mate, GC in 4 jours de Dunkerque is clearly bigger. Come on.
Yeah, maybe. And tomorrow, it doesn't say he's doing Drome Classic, which is somewhat surprising. Maybe he needs to rest up before Strada next weekend. But indeed, tomorrow is the Drome Classic, second part of this weekend. Is Remy Rochas doing that? No, he's in Camino getting pumped.
No, he's at the community meeting of small people like yourself. But talking about yourself for a second, before we get to the biggest race of the day, you got a haircut for the classic season starting. Does that mean you also consider Omloop the real start to the season?
Dude, it wasn't a good one. I said to her, can I get a short back and size with a fade to a 3 and a little bit of length off it? I must have gone to Pogacar's barber. The one he keeps going back to, the one that makes him look like Friar Tuck. But she fucked my shit up.
Your cut doesn't look as bad as Pogacar's though.
I know, yeah, but I wanted it not this short. It's cold. It's a bit airy around the ears in Andorra at the moment. This is my Australia sort of haircut. So, listen, not the best. I've had worse in Spain or Andorra where they make me look like Marek Hamzik from, his FIFA Ultimate Team headshot in FIFA 14.
Mate,
Uh,
you look like you're a lawyer again.
I had someone say to me on Friday, they just started speaking Dutch to me, and like full speaking Dutch to me, and then I looked at them, I was just blank. I was like, because I'd been speaking for like a long time in English, and then I was like, I don't speak Dutch, and they're like, but you look Dutch. I was like, what do you mean by that? They're like, take it how you want.
As a Belgian, I cannot consider that a compliment.
I know, and I was like, bruh, how am I Dutch? I'm part of Remy Roche's secret society of short people. I'm clearly not Dutch. So, yeah, it was funny though. Fallen Drone Classic tomorrow. The first race for Axel Zengler of Team Viz Melissa Bike. She will be wanting to win. This is a race he won last year on UAE Team Emirates. I think he's the favorite for tomorrow, and I think he probably will win. And Tom Donenworth for Groupama looks pretty good. Skelmoser has a good chance. Enrique looks really good. So I think it's going to be another good race tomorrow. And I'm going to pick Hirschi.
Okay, I'll allow you to do so. But I want to talk about the biggest race, like I mentioned already, of today. The fourth stage of El Gran Camino, the historical route. We got to add that extra spice to the name of the race. And like it was the mountain stage. It was a stage with mountains in it. Otherwise, I would not be classifying it as a mountain stage. 10 kilometers, 6.3%. And the final climb is 2.8, 6.5%. Like, if you just got that final climb, then I'm like, okay, Kort wins the stage. But all the climbing before prevents that from happening and makes it an actual mountain stage. And we saw the riders that we'd expect to be strongest on this climb be the strongest. Derek G, Davide Picanzoli, Jefferson Alvaro Cepeda. Those are the ones I was looking at. But then there was this guy from Burgos Burpellet BH that from Guatemala that, I won't lie, I had barely heard of this man.
I said, who is this?
I knew he won a stage at Portugal, I think, 2 years ago.
Last year, he won a stage of Volta. And that result looks a lot better now because he dropped Afonso Eulalia, who actually, he's on Bahrain now and looks like a legit good climber. And he won that uphill finish. But yeah, 24 from Guatemala on Burgos. He was all right in the Mallorcan races, which were a high level.
True. Like he showed good level there, but I didn't expect this to happen. He followed Derek G, then had a 1v1 sprint on top of the climb. Who won the sprint?
Chmil won it by with the. It's like he's won a million bike races. Benji, the perfectly timed nailed him with the bike throw. So he played it perfectly. He moves up to 8th on GC. And he could have been sort of in the top 6, but I think he'll take the stage win instead. Derek G's been very, very strong. Just dominated really this race from start to finish. The TT yesterday, and he did a great job today. Piganzoli kind of Almeida'd Cepeda, I would say, and he actually defends his GC. He moves up to 2nd on GC with a 12-second lead on Kort. Tomorrow is. Yeah, it looks like an uphill sort of sprint for Magnus Kort. So even if he wins, as long as Piganzoli stays on the same time, he should defend 2nd. G has GC wrapped up unless it becomes carnage. But to be honest, the Israel team here is really good with Ugo Ull, Frigo, Clark. So, yeah.
2 things. First of all, I was kind of shocked at how good Piganzoli's time trial was. I know it was half a mountain time trial, but I never imagined that man to come so close to Derek G in that time trial. And also, this Maxime Decomble kid on Groupama VTG. That guy's 19. He's got a pretty good season so far, right? 5th at the 12 Bissage time trial, 3rd on this time trial as well. And he's not climbing absolutely horrible, not enough for GC. What is it, Maxime Decomble?
Maximum Cockwomble. He's another English guy that's infiltrated the FDJ team alongside Tom Donenworth. And he looks like a good TT rider, like 11th in TT, U23 Worlds. So looks strong. 19. Remy Rochas not doing so well. Bit of a shame.
First present on the podcast, as his name gets joked about.
Listen, what do you want?
Welcome to the Lanterne Rouge.
They got a guy called Gruel. Like, Oliver Twist, please can I have some more, sir? Like, they're just making these guys. It looks like PCM created characters on some of these teams at the moment.
Yes, that is actually true.
Or like, yeah, because does sometimes PCM not have the rights to certain teams, and they just
don't have the rights, and then they would like make fake names that look like it. So, for example, Chris Froome could be Chris Run on the game. For example, that was the year after, if I recall, the Chris Froome running meme. So yes, they don't have the rights for every team.
It's like Brian Lara Cricket, 07. Often wouldn't have the rights, or Pro Evolution Soccer back in the day. So Camino, yeah, Derek G is Derek G doing the Giro? He is. Derek G is amongst the other big list of riders who probably will top 10 the Giro, looking good to top 10 the Giro. Anything else? Any other news in Cyclismo, Benji?
Yes.
Oh, yeah?
Rabobank is back.
Oh, yeah, Rabobank's back.
So it was announced by NOS and Willerflats roughly at the same time, where Rabobank makes a big return in the sport of cycling. I would like to take that in parts. I feel like it's doing it in different ways. For example, the main story for men's cycling is that Rabobank is basically replacing, if I read it correctly, the Bad City logo under the arm on the Visma Lease bike kit from the Tour de France onward, is the way I read the article. Because Bad City is a betting company. Currently in Belgium, there's already rules for the sake of betting companies not being allowed to express themselves and their brand on sports events and jerseys, promotion, etc. like that. And from the 1st of July, that rule also counts in the Netherlands. Now, I've already seen Visma have a different, I think Yuki or something was the other logo that is in that space right now. So seemingly they have already made that move to a non-betting product on their jersey. But from the Tour onwards, if I recall, that would be the spot for Rabobank. Now, that is the one thing. I very much like the second part, where Rabobank will be investing in the youth pipeline development, the whole youth sector of cycling within the Dutch cycling world. Because currently that's on fire. Currently that's burning. You've got the guy that's running it kind of sitting there with, like the Minister of Sport is probably sitting there with like a little teacup saying, this is fine. This is fine. We're just going to spend less money on cycling in this world. And then Rabobank is apparently coming in to put more money in it. So that's a fantastic thing, in my opinion. I think with the... I don't know whether this applies also to the women's team, though. That's something I haven't seen. Because, like, Rabobank hasn't been in the sport since 12, 13 years, is what all the articles say. It's technically not true. They left the men's team after the doping events in the men's team back in the day. I think they were still putting money in the team for 1 year or something during the Blanco Pro Cycling year, but they were still in the women's team afterwards, if I recall correctly, which I'm not even sure that team was remotely related to the men's structure. I think that was a completely different team, Rabobank Live.
It had Vos and Ferrand Prevot on it.
And now as well.
Yeah, I think in 2014.
I'm not sure whether Rabobank also joins the women's team, though. That's something I don't know.
Yeah, it's a whole. Yeah, they're coming on board. It's one structure. It's under the same holding company, the men and women's team. But I think to your point, Benji, I was shocked the other day. Right, I was looking up the race start list in I don't know, a Nations Cup race or some like. I think it was like E3 Juniors or something. Or I clicked down like by the nations. How many starters? Italy. 50 riders, 50. Belgium, 50 riders. Australia, like 5. Belgium, as I said, loads. Netherlands, 4. The same as like Australia.
Yeah.
And I was like, how is this possible? Like, I understand why there's not so many Kiwis. There was triple the amount of British riders in this junior or U23 race I was looking at than Dutch riders. And that's a problem. So you're right. Grassroots investments required. Rabobank, they'll be investing in that. And that's why it was so warmly received, I think, actually domestically in the Netherlands, the news, because there needs investment in it.
Yeah, I think internationally, the reception was also relatively positive for Rabobank re-entering the sport, because like I had to check myself a little bit, because I was like, I remember the old days of Rabobank. I remember watching the likes of Robert Geesing back in the day, Michael Rasmussen in the yellow jersey. Those are vague memories I have from Rabobank back in the day. But at the end of the day, I don't know the history perfectly, but I would be relatively sure when I say that it was not the brand that was 100%. Like, they weren't the ones doping the riders in the team. That was the team structure itself, or the riders itself. I can't find myself to blame the structure of the actual brand Rabobank for that era. Does it feel weird to see Rabobank again in the sport having those vague memories? Yes, in the same way that it would feel weird seeing US Postal again. But I don't think we should look at it like that, if that makes sense. Even though my first reaction was probably like, I don't know how to feel about this. While in reality, I know objectively this is a good thing. You know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the executives themselves were to blame with Rasmussen, for example.
Let's fucking hope so.
So it's good to see. It's good to see actually that message that they're a big company, Rabobank. They're a huge bank in Europe, and they stepped out of the sport. They're a pretty big bank.
Really? Do they exist outside of Netherlands?
Rabobank.
I don't actually. In Belgium, I don't think they're that big.
Yeah, but you can't.
Well, but
can anyone qualify for a loan in Belgium?
What the fuck?
Dude, they're in the whole of Europe.
These Australians come to our European country and think they're everyone here. Huh?
You're the one that said Rabobank's like a small domestic Dutch bank. They're huge European cut. They're in Luke's saying they're in Australia. They have like branches in Australia. I've seen. So the point is,
yeah, but Australia's a colony of the UK anyway, right?
Yeah, we can't qualify for loans either. Don't worry. That's why I can say it. Because our criminal record from the 1700s.
Jesus Christ.
The point is, they stepped out of the sport because of the state of the sport at that time, and they've now decided at a corporate level that it's okay to it's good to they want to step back in. That's a good message for, I guess, the whole of cycling, not just Visma itself. That they think the sport's changed in the last 10 to 15 years. So, yeah, cool news. It was cool news when Lidl stepped in. It's cool news when Decathlon stepped in. Like these big companies, Red Bull, Tudor. A lot of these companies in the last 4 years have decided we want to be in cycling. We think cycling's a good place to be for our brand. And yeah, I guess it's positive because we've done a lot of negative news, Benji, recently about coverage and about
even
race rights
with FDJ Suez.
Yep, exactly. So positive news, and we'll end on a positive note. Yeah,
we are a positive podcast. The Lanterne Rouge positive podcast. LRPP. That's weird.
And South Aegean Island, Benji?
What?
Visit South Aegean Island. What happened?
Visit South Aegean Island? What the fuck are you talking about?
It's a visit South Aegean Islands. It's a 2.2 race in Rhodes today, won by Astana Devo team. Astana Devo won. They're on fire everywhere. They're winning everywhere, Astana. But
is this
also
not the Rhodes GP or the Rhodes stage race from back in the day?
I don't know. I was just winding you up. But I do want to highlight one guy who I said would do well. Nahom Zerai won the uphill finish in Rwanda today. His first pro win, the Eritrean. He's on Ukio. Someone's got to give this guy a shot in Europe on a pro team. If you're a Burgos, if you're a Astana Devo, it's a good rider. Okay, he's not going to win the Tour de France, but deserves a shot. And cool to see him win. So Milan Doni also good for Lotto Devo team. That's all from us today. We'll be back with the recap of Kerner tomorrow and Jerome Classic and the finish of Camino. I hope you enjoyed it. Classics are here, and we'll see if another sprinter can win tomorrow. Until then, ciao.